Stranger Things Season 5 is going to be different in more ways than one. What's going on, guys? I'm Chris, and welcome back to another video. So today I've got a Stranger Things Season 5 update, as we have heard from one of the cast members. They've recently been interviewed, giving us a little insight as to what we can expect from their character, but also the overall season as a whole. Before I get into this, though, hit that like button, comment your predictions for this character and the show as a whole down below, subscribe to that notification bell, and of course, consider joining my Patreon for extra content. Recently got a lot of cool things going on over there. Any support goes a very long way. So Gaten Matarazzo, who we know and love as Dustin Henderson in Stranger Things, was recently interviewed for an upcoming series he's involved in, and I believe it's actually some sort of Lego Star Wars series called Rebuild the Galaxy. Haven't checked it out. Never say never, though, I guess. But in an article from The Direct, which I'll link the full article in the description of this video, he details how Season 5 will be a different vibe, along with what we can expect to see from Dustin in this final season. So I'm going to read some excerpts from this article. Again, if you want to read the whole thing, you can check that out linked in the description of this video. But there's some juicy stuff here. In the article, Gaten says that he, referring to Dustin, is still the guy we know and love, but there is a context of trauma and that weight of loss that seems to carry on with him through the early process of the season. And hopefully that's something that people like to see him grow through that arc and see him start to deal with intense grief at a young age. He goes on to say, I think a lot of people, myself included, can really resonate with and understand what that confusion and that rage can feel like. So I'm stoked for people to see that. Now, at the end of Season 4, we obviously lose Eddie Munson, who became this role model figure to Dustin over the course of a couple episodes in Season 4. We don't have tons of scenes with Eddie, but we do understand Eddie is like this big brother figure to Dustin in this season, specifically with regard to the Hellfire Club. And Eddie really hits home on this message to Dustin, hey man, be you, embrace yourself, and love that. Like, never change Dustin Henderson. I loved their relationship so much, and we heartbreakingly lose Eddie at the end of Season 4. However, his impact will live on forever through Dustin, and that's seen through some set photos even. You know, in Season 5, Dustin is still rocking the Hellfire Club shirt months and months after Eddie's death, and so it seems like Dustin might be the new leader of Hellfire as far as we know it. It's hard to say with 100% certainty. But at the end of Season 4, in that epilogue, we get the 2 days later, and we see Eddie is no more. He's viewed as this demonic presence in Hawkins. No one has respect for him, and we get this scene of Dustin with Wayne Munson, who's Eddie's uncle. And this one scene gives us just a brief glimpse at some of that trauma, some of that intense grief that we're going to see Dustin deal with in the 5th and final season. Dustin essentially reassures Wayne, like, Eddie was a good dude. Not a lot of people got to really know him, but I did. And then Dustin goes on to give Wayne the guitar pick, but it's truly tragic what happens with Eddie, because Hawkins and the media view him as this demonic cult leader, which is so far from the truth. They got everything twisted. Eddie is one of the most kind-hearted characters in the entire show, who loves deeply and cares deeply for those around him. So it is sad, it's tragic, and I hope he gets to, you know, have his name redeemed by the end of this show. But that's going to be on Dustin to do that, I think, to really spread the good word about him and maybe get the truth out by the end of this whole thing. But just that one little scene between Dustin and Wayne Munson at the end of Season 4 was emotionally devastating, so I can only imagine what's in store for us in Season 5. And based again on these comments that Gaten has made, it seems like we're really going to explore that in Season 5, and that Dustin's character arc is going to heavily revolve around Eddie's passing and Dustin having to grow as a person and move on from that. Go through the grieving process at a very young age, only in high school. I imagine that pain's going to continue to linger on for Dustin, not only in the 2 days after that we see at the end of Season 4, but all the way into the time jump where we're seemingly going to be in fall of 1987 in Season 5. He's still going to be heavily impacted by the death of Eddie. But I'll give it to Dustin. Based on what we've seen, it looks like he's not changing who he is. He's still rocking the Hellfire shirt, and I've said this since I want to say like January, February of this year when we got that first photo of Gaten in the Hellfire shirt. The neckline is ripped, and then he kind of put the pieces of the puzzle together throughout the behind-the-scenes teaser and more behind-the-scenes shots we've gotten. It looks like he could be getting chased and beaten up by bullies when he goes to visit Eddie's grave, but that doesn't stop him from being him at the end of the day. He's gonna stay true to himself and honor Eddie's legacy no matter what it takes, because he knows the truth that Eddie was a good man and a hero deep down. So life for Dustin Henderson is gonna be much different in this final season, especially at Hawkins High School. Dustin and his friends have always been sort of picked on and bullied, bullied, but it's going to be even more prominent here in season 5. But that's not the only thing that's going to be different about this final season. Hawkins, as we know it, has been forever changed, and Gaten kind of touches on that this next part of the interview. He says, I think it's a different vibe for sure, because obviously things are a lot different going into the season comparatively to past ones. Whereas in the last season, which was season 4, we kind of see there are small victories around in the sense that it seems like Vecna has been subdued, but also there's a big major loss where we see the rifts open throughout Hawkins. We see at the end of season 4, Hawkins is in real disarray. And so we're starting this season in the aftermath of that. And he makes a really valid point here. We are in a new era of the show. It reminds me of a comment that Duffer Brothers made in an interview a while back. I've touched on it in a couple of my videos. Basically where they're like, season 5 starts at 100 miles per hour. There's not a lot of time to establish anything because we already know what's at stake, right? The end of season 4 made that pretty clear. And so in the opening of season 5, we don't need to take 2 episodes, like say with season 3 or season 4, to introduce the new main plot. Like we kind of already know what the deal is. Hawkins is in ruins. The Upside Down is seemingly like merging with Hawkins, coming into the real world, and Vecna's still out there. He's subdued, like Gaten says, but he's still out there, and that looming threat will likely be hanging over our heads in the first couple episodes until he makes his return. But the world of this show as we know it is forever changed. We're not gonna have, a scene of our main kids hanging out at the mall to start the season or going trick-or-treating. Like, world-changing issues are at stake, not just for Hawkins, but for the entire world in this universe of Stranger Things. And so this is going to be the biggest season in scale by far, and this is not news, we've known this, but how will the characters respond? Dustin's going to be intensely grieving Eddie still. You've got Lucas on the other hand, who's dealing with Max being hospitalized. Is she going to wake up from the coma or not? What's going on with 11 having to deal with all this? Does she feel some sense of responsibility? You've got Will Byers obviously and his ties to the Upside Down. Everyone's going to be grieving in this season, and I imagine we're going to lose a main character, maybe not one of the kids, but an older character or adult, and that's just gonna pile on the grief. And so everyone's gonna be dealing with their own emotional baggage in this final season of the show. But how are they going to work together as a team to respond to that and finally put an end to Vecna and the Upside Down as we know it? We'll have to find out in season 5, but it's going to be a different vibe. That's a fact. Like, I would imagine this show's going to be entirely different structurally speaking. We could open at the very end of season 4, then have a time jump into the fall of 1987, and then, have our epilogue time jump into potentially 1988, 89, a lot of people are saying. If you've watched a recent video, you know what I'm referring to, but there is a lot they could play around with here as it is the final season. So characters are going to be different. They've changed. They've dealt with grief. This show's structure could be different, and will it tonally even be different? Season 3, a lot more lighthearted. Season 4 and 2 went more on the horror side of things. Is this going to be the darkest season yet? Could this go down as like the best season of the show, but potentially the least rewatchable because of how emotionally taxing it is to watch certain moments? These are all questions we'll have answered next year, thankfully, as the show is coming out in 2025, this final season. But it poses the question, how different will this season be? Is too different a bad thing? Should we be concerned? I don't think so. The Duffer Brothers are going to stick this landing, and they've proven time and time again they know this show better than anyone for a reason. But will this show be so different that it's not Stranger Things anymore? I highly doubt it. I still think this is going to be potentially the best season of the show so far, but different is scary for me as someone who doesn't like change or new things too much. It takes a lot of getting used to. Stranger Things season 5 being different could mean many things. We'll have to be patient and wait and see how it all plays out. But how do you guys feel about season 5 having a different vibe? Characters potentially being a bit different compared to past seasons? Let me know in the comments down below and hit that like button. Subscribe to that notification bell to be notified for all my future videos. If you want extra content, you can find that over on my Patreon. Any support over there truly does mean the world. But thank you guys, as always, for watching, and until next time, I'll see you on the other side of the Upside Down.